Good morning and welcome to this webinar by GrowGreen and the World Resources Institute on creating sponge cities with nature-based solutions. GrowGreen is a European Horizon 2020 project that focuses on climate and water resilience for cities through nature-based solutions. This project is led by the Manchester City Council and has multiple city partners: Valencia, Wrocław, Brest, Modena, Zadar, and Wuhan. Investment in nature-based solutions is an opportunity for cities, as it can contribute to economic recovery after the global pandemic, but also reduce emissions and strengthen climate change resilience, biodiversity, health, and well-being. The Chinese Sponge Cities program embeds nature-based solutions in the urban planning system of cities as part of efforts to manage flooding. The sponge city concept refers to a type of urban management that allows cities to resolve urban waterlogging, improve water storage and discharge capacity, enhance water quality through a mix of nature-based solutions and grey solutions. Sponge cities also prioritize the protection and restoration of original ecosystems in the urban area, such as rivers, lakes, wetlands, and they emphasize the natural strengths by applying different technical measures, such as infiltration, retention, storage, purification, utilization, and discharge. So one of the program pilot cities of the Chinese Sponge City program is in the city of Wuhan, which has considerable experience with this concept as part of their municipal master planning. And many European cities are also interested in this process of benefiting from nature to reduce climate change risks and make them part of urban planning. This webinar presents an opportunity for exchange of knowledge and experiences between European and Chinese cities and other interested experts and stakeholders, learning from the experiences in Wuhan and Manchester, shared information by GrowGreen project partners, and we will focus in particular on Sponge City program planning and design, as well as financing in Wuhan. We will also hear more about the green infrastructure strategy in Manchester and the design of nature-based solution strategies with citizens for social benefits. We'll look at how the Sponge Cities approach can be incorporated into planning systems and to mobilize investment, as well as the role of public and private partnerships. And we look at the impact and context of cities to see which Sponge City approaches can be applied universally. So I'm pleased to welcome our distinguished speakers today, and I will introduce them to you while we go through our agenda. And in between the presentations, we also have the opportunity for you as participants to ask questions or share your ideas and experiences. And you can use the Q&A box throughout the webinar at any time. I also would like to remind you that this webinar is recorded so that it will be available also to those who cannot join us today. So with that, I would like to introduce to you our first speaker, Yunyu Peng, who has recently completed her Master in Nature Management at the University of Copenhagen, and she is from Chengdu, China. She has worked with IUCN and GrowGreen to write a report about the Chinese Sponge City as a new solution for urban water management, and more specifically about the Wuhan Sponge City program. So Yunyu, I'm happy to hand over to you for your presentation.
Hello, shall I share my screen?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Can you see my screen?
Excellent. Maybe you can also show it a little bit bigger by showing the slideshow. And if you like, you can also add your video so we can see you.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Yunyu. I'm from GrowGreen project, and I will give a brief introduction to the Chinese Smart City program, and specifically focus on Wuhan to look at the implementation of the program at the municipal level. So firstly, China has been facing water management challenges for years, and there were several dominating water issues related to water pollution, water shortage, damaged water ecosystems, flooding, and waterlogging. So the main reasons behind includes the frequent and intense precipitation, concrete pavements used in fast urbanization, and insufficient urban stormwater drainage systems. And in addition to that, the decreased natural water bodies and climate change has also exacerbated the situation. So there's an urgent need to transform from conventional engineering-based approaches to address the new types of water management challenges in urban area to a holistic and systematic nature-based model. So what is the sponge city? The concept was derived worldwide, such as the concept is similar to the low-impact developments from the USA. And the sponge city concept refers to a way of urban management that allows cities to use natural forces and enable urban areas and infrastructure to act like sponges in order to resolve urban waterlogging and flooding, to improve water shortage and water quality through a combination of nature-based and green solution. The concepts also utilize 6 different technique measures, including infiltration, retention, storage, and purification. Now let's look at the Sponge City program at the national level. So at the national level, it sets the targets as to construct 20% of the urban area into sponge standards by 2020 and 80% by 2030. And they also published a set of national policies, and in total 30 pilot cities were selected to implement the program. Then talking about the financial investment of Smart City program, different levels of governments work together to provide funds and also promote social investments to engage social private sectors in the Smart City program through public-private partnerships and franchising. And the Smart City program also established a set of indicators and the evaluation criteria to evaluate the performance of different cities. And they also provided guidance to incorporate sponge projects in various municipal sectors and municipal infrastructure. So let's move on to Wuhan. Wuhan is well known as the city of 100 lakes, and around a quarter of the municipal area is occupied by water. And the principal challenges that Wuhan is facing with includes waterlogging and water pollution, primarily due to the low elevation of the built-up area, intense precipitation, urbanization, and decreased natural lakes. And also the mixed sewage and stormwater pipes makes the water pollution situation even worse. So followed by the national guidance, they also set the targets as to construct 20% of the urban area into spongy standards by 2020, which has already achieved, and 80% by 2030. And to adopt the concepts according to the local condition, they also established different technique targets, such as the volume capture ratio of annual rainfall, the capacity to resist 50-year storm, and to eliminate water pollution and improve water quality. Wuhan has also addressed a systematic and whole process management using a combination of green, blue, and gray infrastructure. And they applied both engineering and non-engineering measures. So here the non-engineering measures refers to daily operation, maintenance, and emergency response. They also proposed the plan to integrate spongy projects in urban comprehensive plans. And Wuhan Spongy City Program also established the index system and allocated different indicators in different zones. And specifically speaking about the spongy infrastructures, they have applied both nature-based solutions and green solutions, such as the rain gardens, green roofs, grass swales, and also the green solutions including permeable pavements and rainwater storage modules. Regarding the project's implementation, Wuhan has designated 2 demonstration areas, hosting nearly 300 pilot projects and attracted an investment of around 11 billion yuan. So the 2 demonstration areas, one is located in an old residential quarter and another one is located in the new development area, showcasing the different types of spongy technologies and facilities that can be used in different types of urban areas. And also, in the same time, Wuhan has promoted the spongy city projects across the city. And regards the project's progress, they have already achieved the first goal as to complete the construction of 20% of the spongy areas, the urban area into spongy standards by the end of last year. And so far, they have achieved quite a few achievements, such as the localized governmental management standards, a set of technical standards established by private enterprises, and Wuhan also built up a spongy science exhibition hall for citizen education. And combining this smart city technologies, they established the spongy city monitoring and evaluation platform to track real-time data and monitor spongy facilities effectively. And Wuhan also formed a spongy industry union to promote research and industrial development of spongy technologies. So talking about the performance of last year, which is another record-breaking rainy season when Wuhan suffered from multiple rounds of intense precipitation. The daily precipitation even reached 472 millimeters. And compared to the storm event in 2016, the number of waterlogging points, the maximum duration and size area of waterlogging points was significantly reduced. And if we take a look at the photos here, we can see the impact of waterlogging on traffic was greatly alleviated due to the construction of spongy city projects, and which showcasing the capacity and potential of nature-based solutions and sponge projects. So lastly, I will give a brief intro to one case study, the Qingshangang Wetlands Sponge Project. So this project is one of the pilot projects located in the old residential quarter, and there were many problems in the area. The river channel was congested with waste, so the drainage capacity was largely reduced, and also because the sewage pipes were discharged into the river channel directly, leading to heavy pollution and eutrophication in the ecosystems. Also, the open space around the area was constructed into shanties and farmlands, so the entire landscape was quite poor before the construction of sponge projects. So these sponge projects aim to enhance the drainage capacity, improve the ecological environments, reduce water pollution, and capture 85% of annual rainfall. They also applied different types of spongy infrastructure, such as rain garden, source control facilities to absorb rainfall at source, constructed artificial wetlands, and other types of spongy facilities. So in the end, the entire landscape quality has enhanced a lot, forming a recreational area, and the drainage capacity has also improved a lot, which has solved waterlogging and water pollution in the same time. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yunyu, for this overview, which I think gives us a good idea of the plans and the current actions on sponge cities in China, in particular in Wuhan. And yes, we will have some time for questions, and please leave your questions in the Q&A box also throughout the webinar. Maybe just one question from my side. If we look at this ambition that China has of 80% of urban area developed according to sponge standards by 2030, that seems, I think, in European terms, quite a high ambition. How do you see that, Yunyu, in the context of the overall development in China? Is this one very highly prioritized program of action, or is this actually the way in which we see the developments in China grow also economically and socially? How do you see it in the context of the country?
Yes, so actually, I think most of Chinese cities they prioritize the spongy program in their city plans, and because at the national level they propose some plans and requires different cities, not limited to the pilot cities, but also other cities to incorporate sponge projects in their municipal plans. So I think like so far most of the pilot cities they have achieved this goal as to construct 20% of the urban area into sponge standards by the end of last year. And for the rest of the cities, they also have already addressed mostly the spongy projects in their plans and started to the construct and the implements of the different types of sponge projects. And also, I think at the large scale, because we have a very comprehensive and top-down measures to implement this program. And I think for European cities, we can actually share different experiences, and also we can look at the whole picture and incorporate those different types of sponge projects in their plans, not just in the like the city level, but we can also promote it at a larger scale, like for the entire Europe, we can think about it.
Thank you very much, Yunyu. I will also add the link to the report that you wrote on this topic for GrowGreen in the chat, so everyone can hopefully see that and pick it up if they like. So then I would like to go to our next speaker, James Rothwell, Professor of Physical Geography of the University of Manchester, one of the core partners in the GrowGreen project. And he will tell us more about the Manchester Green Infrastructure Strategy and in particular the West Gorton Sponge Park.
Thank you, Chantal. Am I coming across okay? Is the audio okay?
Excellent.
Great. I'll share my screen now. Okay.
Okay.
Is that coming across okay as a full screen?
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm delighted to be part of this webinar today. As Chantal has already said, my name is James Rothwell. I'm a professor at the University of Manchester in the Department of Geography. I'm a physical geographer, so I like things in relation to water. I work in the arena of green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, and it's really great to talk to you all today about the Manchester Green Infrastructure Strategy and also the West Gorton Sponge Park. So I'll just move on to sort of situate ourselves. Myself being a geographer, I thought it would be appropriate to show you a map. So here we are. So Manchester, for those international attendees of the webinar, Manchester is located in northwest of England, and it's part of the wider Greater Manchester metropolitan area, shown here with this sort of black outline. And Manchester sits as one of the boroughs within that Greater Manchester wider metropolitan area. We have lots and lots of rivers running through Manchester, some famous rivers from the River Mersey you may have heard of, and also lots of high quality green space throughout the Manchester City region. So back in 2015, the City Council, with a range of partners, came up with and adopted a green and blue infrastructure strategy. And this really sort of consolidated lots of work around the arena of greening, regreening our cities, protecting nature and such like. So it sort of consolidated lots of great work that had already gone on. And central to that green and blue infrastructure strategy, adopted in 2015, was 4 key sort of objectives or ambitions that that strategy wanted to realise over the next 10 years, from 2015 to 2025. And I've shown them here on the screen. So the 4 are improving the quality and function of existing green and blue infrastructure. So that objective really did recognise that there was lots of green infrastructure and blue infrastructure around the city and its region, but it was about improving the quality and function of that existing green space and blue space. Also really important as part of the green infrastructure strategy was to improve the linkages or the sort of connectivity between green and blue space and around the city, and also for residents to have greater access and engagement with that existing green space. Also central to the Manchester Green Infrastructure Strategy was education and understanding. Really central about promoting the wider engagement with citizens on the benefits of green infrastructure, all of those great things that green infrastructure and indeed blue infrastructure can deliver. So very much central to the green infrastructure strategy, it was about education. And also, you may well know that Manchester is a rapidly growing city. There's more cranes in Manchester building high-rise blocks than anywhere else in Europe. Huge amounts of investment in the city centre of new developments. And as part of that green infrastructure strategy, there was real ambition to have that green and blue infrastructure woven in and a key component to new developments. So really central in this sort of development of the city centre in particular to weave in those green and blue elements. So I just want to take you through just a few sort of photos and a few reflections on sort of progress to date before we move on to West Gorton. So here we have an example of one of many woodlands in Manchester. Even though we have lots of high-rise and dense urban fabric, there's also lots of woodlands, forests throughout the city region. And what the Green Infrastructure Strategy has done is enabled friends of groups, community groups, charities to work to enhance those existing assets. So enhancement, improving the quality, improving the function, even simple things like putting footpaths through wooded areas to engage those local communities to interact and enjoy them. New developments, as I mentioned before, lots and lots of new developments in Manchester city centre, huge amounts of private rented accommodation. And as part of those new developments, we've seen developers starting to engage with some really quite nice green infrastructure schemes woven into the sort of fabric of these new developments. So rather than lots of shiny glass and metal, they're actually starting to see the benefit of bringing that green space, bringing that green infrastructure into the sort of the heart of those developments. So new developments have really started to engage with some of these novel sort of like green roofs, green walls, bioretention tree pits and such like. Also, you know, Manchester city centre, well-established city centre, has seen retrofit of green infrastructure. So here we have in St. Peter's Square, which is right in the city centre of Manchester, a number of large mature trees being planted into bioretention tree pits, you know, to help with water attenuation, help with some urban cooling. There's this in summer, we've got lots of people sitting around benches under these trees, real nice feature within St. Peter's Square in Manchester. So that retrofit has been very important, but come with that is challenges such as below ground services. How do you sort of retrofit into that dense urban fabric? But though some of those barriers have been overcome. Also innovation. Manchester's got lots of you know, a transport network. We've got a tram-based system running through the city centre, and here we see cedar mosses planted along the rail, along the tram tracks. Really nice feature, helping with a range of benefits. Central to the Manchester green and blue infrastructure strategy is education and improving awareness. So, you know, working at a sort of ground level with primary school children, you know, they can you know, then go home to their parents and talk about how they've learnt about green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, the importance of nature, the issues of urban challenges in Manchester such as flooding and heat wave potential in the future, and how nature-based solutions and green infrastructure can benefit that. So, you know, starting at a young age and right through. And, you know, there's important engagement actors within the Manchester area, such as Groundwork, which work very closely with local communities. And also ambition as part of the Manchester strategy. This is actually from the City of Trees, which is a sort of charity within Manchester, and their aim is to plant 3 million trees across the wider metropolitan region. So, you know, there's real ambition, real engagement, and real progress being made on the ground. So what I want to do now is sort of change gear a little bit and change from Manchester to Wuhan and then back to Manchester. So back in 2018, a team of us from the university, from the city council and wider partners went out to Wuhan for a really enlightening visit and to look at their Sponge City program. And we were absolutely blown away by the amazing green infrastructure, nature-based solutions that were being used around the city, such as planted swales, the permeable paving, rain gardens, tree pits taking road runoff, information boards that sort of showed what those features were doing for local residents. This was a really enlightening visit and really sort of inspirational, if you will. So on the GrowGreen project, we took this learning from Wuhan and have now applied that to our very own park back in Manchester. So I want to fly us back from Wuhan back to Manchester into an area just outside the city centre called West Gorton. So West Gorton is an area that has had low levels of sort of adult education, low household incomes, high levels of deprivation. And really challenging neighbourhoods. So this was back in 2013, and what the GrowGreen project has done is delivered a brand new park for this location, which very much embeds the principles of the Sponge City programme and our inspirational visit to Wuhan, and building on that Manchester green infrastructure strategy. So the vision was to create a wonderful park that linked the local neighbourhood together, that really had great access and lots of play space for children, but also as part of that is embedding nature-based solutions, green infrastructure, and the sponge city principles into that design. So first and foremost, it looks absolutely fantastic. I hope you all agree. Lots of high quality play space for local children to really play and really engage and see that benefit of being in the outdoors. But woven into this high quality play space is a number of sponge city sort of principles of taking water that would ordinarily have gone into a overloaded sewer system that has capacity issues that can lead to downstream flooding. So taking that water out of the sewer system and redirecting that rainwater that would ordinarily go down the drains and using it within this green space. So here we have one of a number of features which I'll take you through now. In our West Gorton Park, the park that drinks water. So this might look like a traditional basketball court, but in fact what it actually does, there's a slight gradient on that basketball court, and the water is taken from the basketball court and is used to sort of irrigate the green space. So it's taken into some bioretention tree pits, feeding watering those trees. Any excess is then taken off back to the sewer system. So it's reusing the water. Ordinarily you might well have connected that water falling on the basketball court straight into a local drain and off into the sewer system. So disconnecting that water from entering the sewer system, rerouting it through the green space. So here we have, again, taken inspiration from Wuhan, is planted swales. So here, road runoff is redirected from this adjacent road under the pavement through that stone head wall and into this planted swale. And really beautiful feature, this little jetty area, sort of so residents and visitors can sort of see and sort of feel part of that feature. Here we have a drone aerial photo shot looking down on the rain garden. Again, this is redirecting runoff that ordinarily would have gone straight to the sewer system from the road down a long linear swale and then into a planted rain garden. And again, in the design of this, which was working with local communities and friends of groups, was actually, can we get people to sort of walk across this rain garden? Well, they've built this decking area so people can literally walk over it and feel part of it. It's not a feature that's tucked away in one part of the park. It's something that people can see the functionality, engage with and interact with. Also part of the sponge park is we've got lots of these wooden check dams. So these are designed to slow the flow. So in the planted swales, water is held back against these little wooden check dams, encouraging infiltration. Lots of play equipment integrated with seating, enhancements in biodiversity. Here we have our planted wildflowers, really great space. Here we have a community zone where there's an opportunity for the community to gather and meet, have events on the plaza area off to the right hand side of the screen. That plaza area, taking inspiration from Wuhan, we actually have got permeable paving there that is taking the rainwater, that is then captured and is rerouted down this long linear rill feature, and that then takes that rainwater through the permeable paving into this rill feature and irrigates the green space on the adjacent side and then down into the tree pit at the very far end. So beautiful feature, but redirecting that runoff that would ordinarily have gone straight to the sewer system. Again, taking inspiration from Wuhan, and also, what local residents wanted to see was, what are all these features? What are they doing? So we've got a number of information boards around the park that situate the visitors, the residents, where they are located, but also giving them some information about the benefits of what those features are doing. What are those check dams doing? Where is the water moving? What's it doing? What are the benefits? So really nice information boards for people to look at. I just wanted to end now with we've just given you some photos and a little bit of teaser data, if you will, on the performance of these features in terms of runoff reduction. Well, we're seeing really fantastic results. The water is being taken from the highway, infiltrated into the ground. The green space is using it, and very little, if any, is being returned to the sewer system. So here we have just an action shot. And in Manchester, as you may well know, we get lots of rain, and in particular, sometimes we get very stormy weather. So back in early 2021, we had Storm Christoph, which was, huge amounts of rainfall, unprecedented levels of rainfall. So me being a geographer wanted to get out and see how the GrowGreen West Gorton Park was functioning. So I ran out, got my camera and managed to get some action shots in the height of the storm, and then revisited a few days later just to see how that water was being infiltrated. And as you can see, water in the height of the storm being held in this planted swale, held back by the check dam, encouraging infiltration. And then a few days later, I returned, and look, it's all gone. All that water would have gone straight to the sewer system. So we've taken it out. We've taken that water out of that network and reused it in the green space for the benefits of the park. So I'd like to end there and thank you for your attention. And I'd love to hear any questions later or now if we've got time.
Thanks a lot, James. And it's wonderful really to see what has been developing in Manchester, and also how some of the inspiration from the visit to Wuhan has really helped to design and to develop these solutions. I think for us as IUCN being part of GrowGreen, it's been a very wonderful journey to learn about all the plans of Manchester, and also how I think you're leading the way in being a city that really integrates nature in the planning, in the development of the city, and engages its citizens. So it's been for us very inspiring to be part of it, and thanks a lot for showing this to us on the ground, and also from a bird's view perspective. And I think there's certainly a lot more we could see, and hopefully we come and visit again. Yeah, so maybe a question from me. I don't see questions at the moment in the Q&A box, but I hope they will come in later. How do you see Manchester in 10 years from now? If we look at Wuhan, there is this target of having 80% according to the sponge standard. How do you see this in Manchester? What do you hope to see in 10 years from now?
Well, I will expect definitely in 10 years that the sort of landscape of Manchester to have changed, and I'm confident, not just hopeful, but I'm confident that there will be many more examples of the West Gorton sort of sponge park, and one of the key things is having an exemplar there where we can take policymakers, people in power, to visit and see it in action. Previously we've not had a fully formed sponge park, but now that we've got that in West Gorton, that can act as a catalyst. It's a real life example where people can see tangible benefits, not just for local residents, great enhancements in sort of health and well-being and engagement, but also those environmental benefits of taking that water that would ordinarily have gone to the sewer and caused potential flooding problems. So we're able to take those people in power, people with influence, people that shape the policy, people, developers round that park, and show them it can be done, and this is what what it can look like. So I'm very confident that we'll see many more sponge parks around Manchester. I'm confident also that, you know, new developments will see more of these sort of sponge principles being woven in, you know, from the outset, rather than sort of retrofitting as well. So yeah, I'm confident rather than hopeful that the landscape will look very, very different. And you know, I'd very much enjoy to take anyone round, any international visitor around the sponge park, whether that be now or in 10 years' time.
Thanks, James. That's really wonderful to hear. I see that we have a few more questions for you. So one question from Guus in Brussels is, what is the influence on fauna in the sponge city projects?
So do you want me to?
Yeah, could you maybe say a few words about that, James? And I will ask Yunyu as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a big enhancement in biodiversity. We're actually looking at sort of floral, you know, and vegetation enhancements in biodiversity. We've not been actually measuring fauna, you know, directly, but anecdotally, you know, the wildflower planting has really enhanced. You know, that you can just see the bees, the insects, you know, absolutely, you know, teeming, you know, across the planted schemes in that sponge park. So although we're not directly quantifying that, you know, anecdotally and just visually looking at it, you know, it looks amazing, you know, in terms of enhancements from a faunal perspective.
Great. So there are multiple benefits indeed of these nature-based solutions. There's another question from Francis Heskett, and he thanks you for sharing all this information about West Gorton and asks if there's any further information on how the muddy areas recovered this summer, and whether the landscape management practices can be adjusted to help recover from storms.
Sorry, I just lost the audio. Just dropped out. Then is it in the chat? Is there any?
It's in the chat as well. So it is about how the muddy areas
oh, yes,
can
yes,
be recovered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a really good point. That you know, those swales in the you know, height of winter, once they've been waterlogged, you know, they will, you know, ultimately you know, be muddy and somewhat depressed in terms of you know, flowers, etc. But you know, fast forward to, you know, I was out there yesterday and took a walk around, fully formed. I should have taken a picture and could have shown you, but yeah, vegetation bounced back, huge levels of wildflowers growing back again. So there is very much a stark contrast from looking at it in the height of winter through to the sort of growing season, and you know, they look just as good, if not better, than the year previous. So you know, the park was built last year, so we've just had one winter, but the vegetation has come back really well, stronger, if not better, because of, you know, that moisture is still there in the soil from you know, from redirecting the runoff.
Excellent. I also see a question from Dan Radulescu. He says, can you give a brief overview of the national, local policies that enable the implementation of the Sponge City project in Manchester, and whether this is voluntary or whether this is a voluntary local initiative?
Well, the GrowGreen project, you know, it's been funded by the European Commission. So in terms of the delivery of that project, the finance has come from European monies. However, the Manchester Green and Blue Infrastructure Strategy, which is a, you know, a strategy across the council, that GrowGreen project sits very nicely into those objectives of that strategy. So the strategy was all about, you know, enhancing, improving green infrastructure, and that was set out in 2015. So the GrowGreen project is somewhat realizing those ambitions of the green infrastructure strategy.
Great. So the questions keep coming for you. There's one here from Helen Ding, who is one of our speakers. She enjoyed your presentation, James, and she asks, what are the investment mechanisms, in particular the private investment, that has facilitated the development of green infrastructure in Manchester, and what are the benefits that developers see?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's a great question. That in terms of the West Gorton Park, that hasn't had private investment per se, but what we are seeing is that in the city centre, where we are having these new developments, that developers are actually seeing the benefits of green infrastructure and are sort of weaving them into, very much weaving them into the new builds. So we rather than lots of glass and steel, they're creating spaces within these new developments in the city centre. Private developers are now starting to see that benefit and putting the green infrastructure there. So for example, green courtyards, rooftop terraces with green infrastructure on. There's examples across the city where where new developments are starting to see that green infrastructure being embedded. However, there is much more to do. I'm not saying that it's fully integrated. There is some way to go in terms of getting more developers and more development, particularly in the core of the city centre, with the green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. But there's glimmers of hope and signs there that things are starting to change. Whereas developers, it would have been a complete no. Now they're actually starting to see that benefit. But I think we still, all of us, have some way to go to keep making the case, keep presenting the benefits, keep showcasing not only the environmental benefits of green infrastructure and nature-based solutions, but also those benefits such as uplifting in house prices, in flat prices because of the green infrastructure that's there, enhancements to the health and well-being of those residents that live in towns and cities because of that green infrastructure. So I think although there's some great examples in Manchester, there's more to do. There's more to do, in not just Manchester, but all urban areas across Europe in terms of this sort of, making the case, and overcoming those barriers with big developers.
Absolutely, yes. I think this is a shared mission that we all have to bring that evidence out there, and to also work closely together with those who, have a major say in what decisions are made and in our urban plans for the future. And these examples, as you say, the demonstration really can help a lot in showing what works and how it works, and it's close to people's day-to-day life. And that's, I think, a great step forward that we didn't even think was possible 10 years ago.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's one more question for you, which is about the perceptions of citizens. It's a person, Courtney, who asks, was there much local engagement with the installation of these nature-based solutions, as we often see some skepticism and preconceptions about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question, that, and in short, yes, there was lots of engagement, but that engagement wouldn't have been possible without working with. We have a sort of a community engagement organisation in Manchester called Groundwork, which works very closely with local communities, and helping sort of translate that vision from the sort of engineers, the designers, the planners, helping translate that with those local communities. Groundwork in Manchester, the organisation that have helped us in that, have been fantastic, and involving residents from the start, showing them some of the initial sort of like schematics and sketches right back a few years ago, and really starting to get the community involved from the start, and showcasing as we go along how things have changed, how their you know, how the aspirations and you know, have sort of, you know, come into and been woven into design. So, you know, things as simple as, you know, okay, if you're having a rain garden in the park, can we have something, you know, so it's not, you know, it's not a sort of a no-go area, because sometimes, you know, nature-based solutions can be fenced off, you know, particularly around sort of, you know, waterlogged areas. So by putting decking over the top, that's what local residents wanted to see, is can we walk through it? Can we walk through it? So, you know, that was a bit of a challenge of how to do that. So yeah, community engagement has been really, really important. And you know, local residents are really you know, blown away by how great the play space is, but also how that's sort of integrated around the nature-based solutions. And you know, we've not just got a nature-based solutions corner and a play corner. It's sort of all woven together. And you know, and going forward, you know, we at the University of Manchester, we're doing lots of monitoring out in West Gorton, from looking at runoff, looking at temperature, looking at biodiversity, but also really importantly, we're doing work with residents. You know, we're doing surveys. You know, how do they feel? You know, what does, you know, have they had a boost in well-being through you know, being able to engage in this park? And importantly, what we've got is a baseline, a before data set. Before this park was delivered, we've got, you know, we'll be able to do a before and after to compare. And I think, you know, maybe it'll come out later in the discussions or in the presentations, you know, the importance of green space in you know, in the COVID pandemic situation. You know, they're absolutely critical, these green spaces and nature-based solutions, you know, in providing that important outside space for local residents in the current situation.
Thanks a lot, James. I think this is indeed an essential part of the work you've been doing. And yeah, we've seen how successful that was in Manchester. And there are also very good examples from other cities. And GrowGreen has some time ago also hosted a webinar that focuses on citizen engagement for nature-based solutions. So I'll add the link to that webinar if you're interested. We have the recording and the presentations available on our website. And yes, I think there is yeah, some great ways of working on that to share. So thanks for now, James. I'll go back to Yun for one more question that we have received from Gabriel Neves from the city of Campinas in Brazil, as he is asking us about how the change in thinking was in the infrastructure sector in China and in Wuhan. So, for example, how that came to changing from using from gray swales to green swales. Can you say a bit about that, Yunyu?
Yeah, so actually, I don't think we should consider the green infrastructure as an alternative choice for the green solutions, because like in most cases in Wuhan, they always work together, and because they have different type of the needs for investments and different return in investments and green values in according to time or some other issues. So we cannot just think about whether we use one single solution for that specific project, but normally we combine green and green infrastructure together. And normally they will conduct a lot of comparative analysis to evaluate both environmental values and economic values. So thinking about the investment returns and all sorts of things together, and then they will make better choices. And also because the spongy projects also incorporated into the municipal infrastructure, such as the parks and some other like road and traffic sectors, they are also included in the should be included in the choice of spongy projects. So considering all those aspects, they just not just provides one choice, so they will always provide several choices and use them together.
That's good to know indeed that it is a more integrated approach and that they often are used in combination, these green and gray solutions. Um, I also wanted to give to you the question from Guus, if you can tell us anything about that you knew on the influence on species, plant and animal species in sponge city projects. Has there been such monitoring in China, in Chinese cities?
In fact, I like from the national level and also from the Wuhan level, they did not monitoring the specific species, but they have included the urban biodiversity in other plants because like biodiversity is also another hot topic in China right now, and they are also promoting the urban biodiversity even at the small scale. So I think later they will also um, establish some other indicators to monitor the species, especially I think in Wuhan, which is very famous for its wetlands and lakes. So I can see from some news, like citizens can see more water birds coming back, and because they have also increased the size of lakes and return some of the development area back to lakes and wetlands. So for sure there will be more species coming back.
That is really good to hear, and indeed, biodiversity is high on the agenda. We know in China, also awaiting the UN Convention on Biological Diversity Conference of the Parties in October in Kunming in China. So there is, yeah, certainly leadership there, and we hope that, yeah, in cities, nature-based solutions can really also help to make that contribution to our worldwide objectives for biodiversity. So thank you, Yunyu and James, for this part of our session. I will then go to our next speaker from the World Resources Institute, Helen Ding. She is an environmental economist, and she will tell us more about the economic, social, and environmental benefits of sponge cities through the experiences that they have gained in looking at the building of climate resilient infrastructure in China. Over to you, Helen.
Thanks, Chantal. So should I load my presentation?
Yes, you can share your screen if that's possible.
Yeah. Just give me a second. It doesn't show up actually on my.
If not, we can also show the slides on the screen and you can tell us when to move to the next one.
Yeah, I think it might be. Oh, maybe I didn't see all the windows. I have too many windows open probably. Sorry. Oh yeah, I found it. Can you see the slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
So you may want to show it in the slideshow mode. So yeah, perfect.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for inviting me to present our recent project. Unfortunately, my colleague who is actually leading the Sponge City case in Wuhan couldn't join, but I'm happy to share some of our earlier experience there. So before I jump into it, I think I just wanted to give a very brief kind of background info on this project. And I want to shift a little bit the attention now to climate change. I think everyone here probably has been really involved in kind of current momentum around climate adaptation and climate resilience, especially for urban areas. And last year, in the Netherlands, we have actually had the government led a global commission for climate adaptation campaign and set up several important discussions around building climate resilience in urban areas and also in other sectors. And WRI, as the secretariat of the Global Commission for Climate Adaptation, up until early this year, we actually developed a global study back in 2019 and look at global climate adaptation actions around the world. And one of the components was looking into the economic benefits. And what we try to do is really to understand whether investing in climate adaptation early on could generate economic benefits. So in the study, we developed a triple dividend methodology looking at different benefits for investing in climate adaptation actions, and including climate resilient infrastructure. And our study from collected evidence from around the world shows that every $1 investment in climate resilient infrastructure can actually generate about $5 in return. So the return is significant. And the question is, how and when should we move quickly into climate adaptation investment? Currently, in comparison to climate mitigation, we know that the adaptation is far behind. So we need really to scale up the investment. And that's why we moved to China since the end of last year, and we wanted to bring our methodology into the Chinese context and really understand how investing in climate resilient infrastructure in China could bring economic benefits, and to what extent we can work with the Chinese government and also other relevant stakeholders, try to scale up investment and move faster in climate adaptation. And so the project is developed in collaboration with several leading partners, including NCSC, which is the major Chinese government agencies developing climate strategies for China. We also work with university on climate finance and also Chinese academies for agriculture science, looking at climate modeling. And we, because of the time frame we have, is really short, so we focus on 3 case studies, looking at first climate risks and nature disaster through climate modeling, and trying to understand what are the key climate risks in the future, and then project by 2050 to see what kind of whether those climate risks are increasing over time. And then we look at 3 case studies focusing on Ningxia, Wuhan, Shenzhen, on 3 types of climate risks. On Ningxia, it's about the climate drought and how water-saving irrigation facilities can actually address drought risk. And in Wuhan, we look at, in particular, the smart city practices against the flooding risk. And in Shenzhen, we look at climate receiving the shoreline, which is also a type of green-gray infrastructure, looking at how it can fight against the storm surge in the future. And building on the 3 cases, we use the same kind of methodology framework to assess avoided economic damages and economic benefits associated with those infrastructures, and also social environmental benefits. And so I wanted to give a brief intro to the Wuhan case now, but please note that I won't be able to disclose too much detailed calculation at the moment, because the report is still being under review currently, and the intended launch date is around September 2021. So I think I just wanted to use this opportunity to inform everyone that just look out for a new study coming from WRI in the next couple of months. And we hope to share more detailed calculation around the benefits that we have calculated for Wuhan, if you're interested. So as I mentioned before, what we did is that we tried to look at climate risks projected for at 2050 for Wuhan under the IPCC RCP scenarios. And what we found is that if you see a comparison of different emission scenarios, you can see that in the future, we can anticipate a much higher temperature in the urban areas and also higher rainstorm and flooding, more frequent rainstorm flooding in the future as well. So that actually shows a clear trend of climate risk in the future for city as a Wuhan. And thanks, Yunyue has made an excellent presentation earlier, which laid the foundation for the smart city concept. So I'm not going to dive into the detail about this anymore. But what I wanted to say is that here, as you know, that by 2020, Wuhan wanted to increase the smart city by 20%, and by 2030, the total urban area, urban built area that will meet the requirement for a smart city construction standard will increase by 80%. So there is a clear, I think, policy insights on building and expanding smart city in Wuhan. And in this study, we didn't look at the entire Wuhan urban area. What we did is that we look at 2 case study areas and trying to get as much detailed information as possible to come up with a more robust economic analysis possible. So we look at Qingshan district as well, which already presented in the earlier presentation by Yunyue. So what we did is that we wanted to look at the smart city as a supplementary kind of infrastructure to the traditional drainage system, which are familiar with the pump stations and pipelines, and in the new smart city construction, they actually introduced green infrastructure concepts and the nature-based solution to support the existing infrastructure. And this is actually an important point to make, because when you look at climate resilience benefits, it's very important to understand what are the additionalities. And if the city has already started to plan, increasing the pump stations and improving the current grid infrastructure, that doesn't really give you an understanding about what additional benefits that can be brought by the smart city construction. So here we just focus on one, and in order to understand how much benefit are can attribute to smart city infrastructures. And in the study, we look at the avoided damage, so which consists of 3 components. So first is about avoided direct asset damage. So this is coming from a use of historical data to look at how much actual damages are caused by flooding, especially the historical flooding events in 2016, which is one of the major ones, and then the recent 2020 flooding events. And in terms of other avoid damages, because green infrastructure can greatly help reduce the runoff. So that actually helped reduce the pressure on the existing pipeline network, and also reduce water pollution flowing into the river. And all of this actually can contribute to avoid the kind of costs associated with operational of urban pipeline network, and also avoid the cost of water pollution control. And then in terms of the economic benefits, we look at stormwater recycling benefits, which a lot of water can be recycled and support other activities in the city. And additionally, we also look at real estate value increase. I think James also mentioned that is the case in Manchester as well. You have seen increasing value of real estate for housing in the areas where there are larger green parks and also other green infrastructure facilities. And then the last component is about environmental benefits, environmental and social benefits, where we look at how green infrastructure could help increase groundwater recharge and also regulate climate and reduce air pollution, and also increasing the recreational and aesthetic value in the urban area. And I think by combining the total, the three dividends in the benefits, we compared it with the cost of building climate resilient infrastructure, especially for the smart city component. And we came up with a 2.3 return rate, which means return every $1 investment could generate about 2.3 benefits in return, which is quite beneficial if you consider there are quite a lot of other urban social benefits that are not really included in its benefits. We tried to quantify the avoided loss and also some of the economic benefits from building areas. But for social environment benefits, I think this is largely underestimated. So I think there are more work need to be done. But I hope that by September this year, we can really disclose more information about our findings and in more detailed manner, so you can better understand our methodology for calculating all these benefits, and also the final return in more concrete terms. So the last slides I want to say that we also did a kind of scaling up analysis and trying to understand the urgency of scaling up a smart city across China. So this is a map which you can see. It's a climate risk, a flooding risk map, projected under the RCP 4.5 scenario by 2050. It shows, and the dark red areas shows where the highest level of risk present in the map. And then the dotted points, the green points showing the current smart city pilot cities, and then the blue points showing that the Chinese cities with the GDP the first ranking at the first 30 in the country, and then the purple dots shows that among those GDP with ranking at the first 30, the cities have been piloted the smart city project in those areas. So you can see there's a huge potential to scale it up across, especially the southeast part of China, and in face of future increasing flooding risk in the country. So it's really urgent for many Chinese cities to start to implement smart cities to reduce the future climate risk. And currently, the recent policy launched in 2021 April, 2 months ago, it shows that Chinese government actually has made a new policy to scale up, aim to scale up the smart city demonstration across China. So there will be more cities that are going to implement the measure, and that shows also the interest and intention of the Chinese government in constructing more pilot smart city in China as well. So I think I will stop there, and thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions regarding the Wuhan case study, please write us an email, and my colleague Wenyi could also reply to you directly if you have more tactical questions regarding the Wuhan case study. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chantal.
Thank you very much, Helen, for all this important information and analysis, which I think gives us much more insights in the potential opportunities on the economic side. And yeah, we really look forward as well to the report that you mentioned. It's striking, as you say, at the global level, that potential return for investing in climate resilience, but also what you currently see in your monitoring in China, a 2.3 return. I don't know how that compares to cryptocurrencies or something like that, but nevertheless, I think it seems like a tremendous opportunity. And this type of studies that you do, I think, are important in really also helping investors on the public and the private side to see this value. Do you also have some conversations or dialogues with these investors on, yeah, how we can really make that transition? Because at the moment there's sometimes still some reluctance or a
Yeah,
lack of understanding. Have you have some
great.
more information on that?
Great question, Chantal. I forgot to mention that we actually work with the University of Central Finance in China, who help us develop financing mechanisms, and it's part of the report. Actually, there are three components. So the first component is about the climate risk, and the second is about estimating the benefits from climate resilient infrastructure. And then the last one is looking at, especially for the three cases, what kind of financing mechanisms are existing? How can we leverage public and private finance to invest in climate resilient infrastructure, especially given a lot of co-benefits, environmental social benefits are non-marketable, and it's very difficult to show to private investors that are actually returns for them. And and we have used different mechanisms. And one of the ideas we have, I can't remember now, it's for the Wuhan case or for the other two case studies. We're also looking at green bonds opportunities and also trying to learn from other existing good practices across the world and see how other cities in other countries have actually managed to increase investment in green infrastructure. And that's why I was super interested in James' presentation, especially when he mentioned that there are clear benefits, being seen by developers in Manchester. And I was just wondering whether we could learn something already from the existing study that you have done for the UK, and maybe also can draw some lessons from other countries as well.
Thanks, Helen, for highlighting that. I don't know if you want to respond to that, James, with regards to the financing and the interest from developers in Manchester.
Hi, Helen. Yes, let's pick up offline on that, and we can have a discussion, because I can sort of point you in the right direction if I'm not able to sort of fully answer that. But yeah, let's pick up offline.
Thanks.
Great that we can make those connections here. I can also add that IUCN is also helping to mobilize investment in nature-based solutions through several initiatives. One of them is with the Regions 20 initiative, Pegasus Investment Capital, which is supported by the Global Climate Facility that has now a investment of 150 million to identify technically feasible projects for nature-based solutions, not all in an urban context as such, but very much linked to restoring natural ecosystems for climate resilience. So I'm happy also to share some more details on that, as this partnership is now starting, as this could, I think, be also an interesting way to connect the knowledge and the evidence and the studies that you're doing with real investment in different parts of the world. I think this initiative that ICN is supporting focuses on the southern part of the world, and yeah, I'm sure there will be also more partnerships developing over time, as we're now also heading towards the ICN World Conservation Congress in September in Marseille, where we hope to gather the community that is working on these actions. So I don't see more questions at this moment for you, Helen, but I'm sure there may be some in the course of the webinar. So yeah, for everyone, please leave it in the Q&A box or in the chat, then we come back to it later. But for now, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
So that brings me then to our next group of speakers. They are representing the Asian Development Bank, Dr. Jin Kyung Chen, Mr. Stefan Rao, and Hinako Maruyama, all urban development specialists, and they will tell us more about key considerations for mobilizing financing for sponge cities. So I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Chantal. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can hear you and we see the screen.
Fantastic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jin Chen. I'm from Asian Development Bank. My colleague today, Hinako Maruyama, Stefan Roll, we will all introduce case considerations for mobilizing financing for sponge cities. And we will showcase 3 projects from ADB. And thank you all, and thank you for the invite and this opportunity to make this presentation. Prior to jumping into the details for each project, please allow me to give some background information on the climate adaptation and climate resilience. The PRC is one of the world's most water-stressed countries. The per capita water resources are about just 1/4 of the global average. By 2030, the country will need up to 20% more in total water supply than it did in 2014, with a rapid increase in the urban water demand. The water scarcity is even further exacerbated by climate change, which will change the seasonality of the rainfall, intensify the extreme precipitation events, and increase the risk of urban flooding. The increased risk of urban flooding will further cause strain, will cause the drainage and sewage infrastructure, and also will make the raw sewage bypass the treatment plants and contaminate the surface water. Because of those vulnerability in the urban infrastructure system, as well as the climate change, there is a high demand for sponge city, and the sponge city development will be guided by the modeling of surface water, weather patterns, drainage system, and groundwater. The national policy is, there has been a national policy to support the construction and development of a sponge city. It is well known that enhancing resilience to extreme weather events associated with climate change is an emerging priority for cities in the PRC. Because of that, the PRC launched the National Sponge City Program in 2015, and all the cities have already formulated their own sponge city special plan as part of the city master plan by 2016, as requested by MOHURD. MOHURD is short for Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development, which is the responsible ministry for the sponge city development in the PRC. There are a number of techniques for climate resilience, several speakers has already discussed about those techniques in the previous discussions. So I'll just skip those, the details of those techniques. But we want to emphasize over here is we have already, those techniques are low impact development, and we have already included them as a technical eligibility in, as part of the loan agreement in our project. So together, those techniques will are expected to reduce the severity of urban flooding caused by excessive rainfall and droughts through storing and releasing runoff in a more ecological way. This slide shows, a very brief introduction of the project we were working on. This is a non-sovereign project, which means that we are directly lending to a company. And the name of the project is Climate Resilient and Smart Urban Water Infrastructure Project. The loan size is 200 million USD equivalent in China yuan to support 400 million USD equivalent in China yuan capex in 3 years. And this is a corporate loan, so the borrower is a water company. Without ADB's assistance, the water company has to raise financing for each separate sub-project from the local branches of commercial banks where the sub-project is located. And ADB's value addition, ADB add value by combining those sub-projects which are too small or too costly to be financed on a standalone basis, and linking the cluster of the sub-projects with a wider financing community, such as the international financing institutions. And the loan proceeds will be dispersed to the water company and further be channeled into multiple water supply and wastewater treatment sub-projects with the smart water technologies and climate disaster resilient urban water infrastructure projects in the form of equity or the shareholder loans. As I mentioned in the previous slide, a number of techniques for climate resilience were already included in as technical requirements in the loan agreement. And so when ADB disperses a loan to the water company, and we need to check whether the money will be used for the technical, the techniques for climate resilience. And once those requirements are satisfied together with the other eligibility criteria, and we can disperse the money to support the development of the climate resilience infrastructure. And for this project, the adaptation finance is estimated as 40 million USD, representing only 20% of ADB's financing and or 10% of the total project cost. And now let me hand over to my colleague Stefan, and Stefan and Hinako will present two sovereign projects in ADB. Stefan, please.
Sorry. Thank you, JC. Thank you, Chantal, and friends and colleagues. Thank you for arranging this meeting. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So what JC has just introduced was a loan to a private sector company. We have a private sector operational department, and of course, maybe ADB is more known for sovereign support, so loans to governments that will be on lend to local governments as a principle of finance. You see here a picture with some plans and then also some results that were already implemented of a project in Jiangxi province of Pingxiang, which is a headwater municipality. That means all the water that is coming in, all the water in Pingxiang runs away from the city. And it is also in the Yangtze River watershed. And in that sense, some of the water will actually even go down to Wuhan and maybe contribute to flooding there if we don't manage it well here. Pingxiang was one of the 16 first sponge city pilots, and ADB investments complemented government investments. Government focused on the urban center area of Pingxiang, and then the ADB investment supported 4 sub-centers in, if you wish, suburbs or rural counties to bring the benefits closer to the rural people, hence the title of the project. And ADB also worked, ADB were focused on river flooding and integration with ecological river rehabilitation, improving water quality and enhancing habitat to increase biodiversity. And you can see here on the left side a few plans, you can see the principle of, in this master plan, the principle of allowing space, green space for the river is followed, and then our detailed plans for the river edges and the river greenways also followed the principle of keeping as much as the land as possible on the low area, rehabilitating wetlands to increase the flow capacity and the retention and detention capacity in case of a storm event. So as mentioned on the right-hand side, you can see already some of the results of the works. The top 2 pictures show a rehabilitated wetland, and you can actually see this is during sort of, let's say, medium level. I don't know what kind of category of storm event that was, but you can see how the water level was already raised and to bring more water onto this wetland. You can see some boardwalk that can also easily be flooded in a storm event, and then in the normal situation, people can use it as a river park. Next slide, please, Jason. The next project that I show is next slide, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So this project is a project in the far northeast. Sorry, one slide before. In Jilin province and Yanji city. This project, in this project, we are integrating multiple urban infrastructure investments with green infrastructure and sponge city green infrastructure investments. You can see that the city organizes itself in an east-west direction, and we're supporting the first bus rapid transit line in the northeast in general, and this sort of will reinforce and transform the city to really become a transit-oriented development place. And we're integrating the bus service with pedestrian and bicycle improvements, bicycle system improvements, and the pedestrian and bicycle improvements will also be alongside new green corridors and small streets that link to the river. We also improve the water supply and wastewater management and specific health outcomes. Next slide, please. We have prepared a sponge city master plan for the entire north part of the city, which you can see here on this slide on the top right. We have proposed and also will invest in a complete transformation of the underground gray infrastructure, the drainage pipeline infrastructure, which is now basically in parallel to this big east-west river, the Wuhan River, and very ineffective, very inefficient, basically transporting a lot of water parallel to the river as opposed to directly into the river, and that is our change. So we will have a lot of shortcuts, bringing the stormwater directly into the river, and we will have what we call end-of-pipe solutions that are also green infrastructure. Before the first flush of the stormwater goes into the river, it will be cleaned with ecological mechanisms. We also have very specific sponge city infrastructure. We base it on these catchments of these creeks, and we also do green roofs, rain gardens. We open up some covered canals and have bioswales and so forth. Things that have already been shown in this webinar. And in the next slide, we can see that the integration and the systemic modeling and simulation. Next slide, JC, really demonstrates how integrating the gray infrastructure with the green infrastructure is very, very effective. We basically have simulated this in a detailed hydraulic model for each of these catchments. And here is an example of one of the catchments where we have this uncovered canal that you can see at the bottom right. And together with the drainage pipe system improvements, we basically eliminate all urban flooding in the future of that city. We also have improved the water supply and are conserving 4.8 million cubic meter of water resources from reducing the non-revenue water that they currently have. I stop here and give the word to my dear colleague Hinako. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Stefan. So I'm going to talk about the case of Huanggan. Huanggan is just next from Wuhan. So we just heard from Ms. Yungyue and Ms. Helen of very good sample from Wuhan. So I won't go into detail. But this Huanggan also, as you can see, it's along the Yangtze River, and it's very prone to the seasonal flood, and also the water quality in the urban lakes and rivers are not so good. So ADB started this investment of $100 million loan, total project size about $152 million since 2014. And this project is still ongoing. We are still under construction. We are basically trying to work with this municipal government of Huanggan to improve the lake and river quality, and also improve the environmental facility in the city. And also at the same time, try to solve the solid waste problems, not to further pollute the water, and also enhance the institutional capacity to properly implement and monitor the water quality and also the flooding control. If you can go next slide, please. So we tried to use NBS approach. We didn't claim this as a sponge city, but basically the idea is a sponge city approach. So in the urban lake, existing urban lakes, we try to construct a surface flow constructed wetland, quite large area, about 80 hectares, so that it can serve as to absorb the flooding water, but also it will serve as the filtering the urban water pollution, and also the subsurface water constructed wetlands. And also we try to use some biological approach. So we try to use a local species, plants and fishes and the mollusk benthic creatures to put in the water and try to use a natural way to remove the pollution. And on the flooding, we put yes, some engineering way to put the sluice gates to control the urban water, because a lot of water and different level of water in the city, but also try to enhance the water circulation and constantly monitor the quality. And also in the nearby communities, they still use the combined sewage system. We try to separate it into separate stormwater and sewage collection. And in terms of biodiversity, here, as earlier mentioned in Wuhan case, there's a lot of migratory water birds here. So we try to constantly monitor if our intervention is not impacting or reducing the species, but rather contributing to increasing the biodiversity. Next slide, please. And another case is still in preparation. This is not directly on water, urban water, but rather it's in a mountain rehabilitation project in Guangxi province in Hezhou city. We tried to use nature-based solution because the mountain area was quite polluted because of the mineral mining. So the soil was polluted by heavy metals. As a result, the surface water and the groundwater are also polluted. So initial government approach was to use the engineering approach in 10 heavily polluted locations to apply very heavy engineering measures and maybe chemical measures to improve the water pollution. But ADB tried to work with them and reduce the engineering measures as much as possible, and only use 4 sites for some engineering measures, and remaining 6 will be naturally restored. And as a result, we reduced about 1/3, reduced the cost of the project into 1/3. And also, this is still to be implemented. So we need a more good direction, and we are trying to discuss with the expert from IUCN actually to how to really implement this idea into the implementation. But this is just what we are now preparing in Guangxi project. So thank you so much. This concludes the presentation from Asian Development Bank. Thank you. Back to you, Shanta.
Thank you so much, all 3 of you, for such insightful presentations and for giving us really a better idea of what is happening at the moment across China, and how important this link is between the ecosystem and the climate conditions and future scenarios, while you also have really made major progress in mobilizing the funding and the awareness for doing such actions. So I don't see questions from the audience at this moment. But perhaps from IUCN side, as we see also at the global stage, this growing momentum of combining the climate change and biodiversity agenda even more, and you refer to the ecological principles that are underlying these projects and these actions that you presented. How do you see this momentum growing, and how do you think this can help us to further mobilize investment that leads to multiple benefits on the climate side, on the social and economic side, but of course also for biodiversity?
JC, should I?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. I think this is a very important question. I think it was discussed before that sometimes government still sees the traditional gray infrastructure sort of as the solution asked for when you talk about whatever flood risk reduction and things like that. And I think slowly people understand that nature can do a lot of work for us, and then of course we will gain a lot of many more benefits from nature-based solutions, from ecosystem services and so forth, including for people, including for biodiversity. But actually, what I have not mentioned in the project presentation for the Yanji project, we have specifically included the dimension of health. And I think this is also important in the overall discussion, not only because of COVID-19, but also the discussion of healthy cities, healthy and age-friendly cities is a very big discussion. There's a lot of activities from the WHO. And of course, if we talk about China, there is a rapidly aging society, and fewer children, more people getting old, and more people getting very old. So we have a transition to a 4th-generation society. And I think nature-based solutions, parks, open space systems provide also services and amenities for this, which has already been mentioned also by several previous speakers. In fact, so I see a lot of synergies happening. And in fact, they all converge on green space, I think. And I think that is the good news. So the good news is that what is considered a good urban sustainable planning converges also with green space and with the nature-based solutions objective, and also biodiversity and health, public health dimensions. In fact, I wanted to ask a question to Helen. If the economic analysis that you are doing in WRI does also include the dimension of health, because I would also see benefits on health from these nature-based solutions, also from the reduced flood incidences, because not only the stress and the sort of the awareness of the risk is a dimension, but also the waterborne diseases and so forth. Thank you very much, Chantal.
Thank you. So Helen, perhaps you want to react to that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the question, Stefan. I think that's a great question. We wanted to include health benefits in particular, from reduced heat waves in Wuhan city through smart city construction, and also a few other co-benefits from reduced pollution. I think I have to check the detailed data and the calculation to give you a proper answer. But I remember we have struggled to find proper, good data to support our analysis, and we've went back and forth several times to look for health data. I think we did include to some extent, but I believe we look into a micro analysis from a previous study, which has looked into global benefits from reduce the pollution, but we didn't do a in-depth analysis looking at the health reduction issues from smart city. Yeah.
Thanks, Helen, and also thanks, Stefan, for posing that question to your co-panel speaker, as that's certainly also the moment now that we can exchange a bit more based on what we've heard. So this health dimension is certainly something which I imagine will continue to become more and more important in the world we're in today, but also overall, of course, we know about the benefits, but yeah, the data is essential here. And I do see here a question from Gabriel Neves from Campinas in Brazil. He's asking, are the investments made directly in the cities, or are they the responsibility of the federal government? So how is this relationship between the different levels of government in relation to the use of financial resources organized?
I don't know, JC, you want, or?
Well, Steph,
generally,
I think you can. Steph, I think you can talk about the sovereign, and I can talk about the non-sovereign. It's a different type of modalities. Yeah.
Yes, very good. Generally, ADB loans are to the borrower, and the borrower is normally the sovereign, which is the national government. But then we deal directly with the local governments when we prepare the projects, and the local governments will also be responsible for repaying the loan. So in the end, so the loan in the end goes to the local government, and the local government also will be fully in charge of basically scoping the loan, scoping the project with us, and deciding how the loan proceeds will be used. And this is sort of a process that starts with a proposal to the national government and ADB, and then we work together over the period of between 1 and 2 years to to shape and scope out the project and decide very specifically what will be supported. This is a process, but the ownership and the loan will be with the local government. I stop here. Thank you.
And for the non-sovereign side, as opposed to the sovereign side, non-sovereign side, ADB lend the money directed to the private company, and I can give you generic structure of a Spawn City project in the PRC, and normally the PPP is the public-private partnership modality is getting quite popular, and several Spawn City projects are using this modality for construction and development. So for our non-sovereign project, the water company or the sub-project company of the borrower is a PPP concessionaire. And for the Spawn City project, normally there is a DE ratio, the debt over equity ratio requirement. And in that case, it's 80-20. So 80 is debt and 20 is equity. And in terms of the shareholders, the local government normally take a bit of the share. And in one of our sub-projects, the local government take 20% of the share, and the rest, so the 80% of the share are taken by the concessionaire, so the sub-project company of the borrower. And this is the typical structure of a PPP Spawn City project. And for ADB's loan, and once the eligibility criteria are fully met, then we disperse the loan to the borrower, and the borrower can use ADB's loan as equity or shareholder loans to support for the 80% of the equity. And then there is a debt. The debt is also 80% of the overall cost. The responsibility in raising the debt financing is falls also under the PPP concessionaire, so the sub-project company of the borrower. So this is a generic structure of a PPP project for Spawn City development in the PRC.
Thank you very much for this additional information. I hope that answers the question from Gabriel. I can also say that Campinas in Brazil, and I've spoken with Gabriel some time ago, is also very advanced in their implementation of nature-based solutions, and GrowGreen is certainly going to plan another webinar or a moment where we can have some more exchange on these developments, and perhaps see a little bit, what we can learn from each other in relation to what is happening in Latin America. Today we're focusing on China, but I think there's a lot of common ground here. So thanks for that question. And yes, I'm also seeing another question from Guus from Brussels, who asked for a bit more information about this statement that Helen made about a rate of return on investing in climate resilience. And I see that Helen also shared a report on this global assessment of return, but maybe you want to say a bit more about that, Helen?
Yeah, it was really a global study. We tried to build on existing literature and trying to see what are, you know, the at a broader range, how much investment can be made in 5 climate adaptation systems, and try to come up with an estimate. So I think if you look into the report in detail, I think that there should be some explanations. Otherwise, I'm happy to connect offline and to explain further how we've done that. It was 2 years ago, so I need to look into the details.
Of course. Thank you. I will make sure that connection is made. And yeah, also in follow-up to this event, if anyone has further interest to connect or know more, just let us know. Um, are there any other questions maybe from the speakers to each other's presentations or from the audience at this moment? I don't see any hands or signs right now, but I think that yeah, we're also getting close to the end of this webinar, and I can and certainly see that there is a lot more to exchange on and to learn, but it's really great to see that there is such growing momentum for integrating nature in these climate change resilience strategies and actions, in particular in China through the Sponge Cities initiative, and the scale at which this is being achieved is really impressive if we look at it from a European perspective, but also as we've seen from Manchester and some of our other city partners here in Europe and in other parts of the world, we see growing interests and opportunities. And as GrowGreen, we will certainly continue to follow that very closely. And the GrowGreen project will make available any new information through our website and social media channels. And we'll also continue to host other webinars in the future on topics that are of relevance to us when we think about further embedding nature-based solutions in our growing cities. We also know that here in Europe, the plans are being made for a strategy, actually a legislation on restoration. Urban areas are essential as part of that. And yeah, we're also providing our inputs, and we will certainly provide them with the information that we've learned today on how this can work, and how we can look at scarcity of space, increasing climate impacts, but also at the opportunities that nature can bring. And you have showed us today a lot of the possibilities there. So on behalf of the Grow Green project team, we would like to thank all the speakers for their excellent presentations and for sharing their inspiring stories and experiences, giving us ideas and food for thought. And we look forward to continue this dialogue. And as said, please keep an eye on our social media and website for what will happen in the future. And we look forward to stay in touch with all of you and wish you good luck with all the fantastic work you're doing. So thanks a lot and have a good day. Goodbye.